I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Are there any questions? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, our agenda today is twofold. First one is the arterial street expansion funding. We've been charged with taking a look at some of the arterial streets and the funding, and taking a look at some of the history on this. And I bet, Chad, you're going to give us some, or is who's going to be? I will be. Okay, Chad, if you would, we'd like to hear a little history on the on this, where it's coming from, and that kind of thing, and then we can ask some questions, hopefully. Appreciate it.
All right. Good afternoon, Chad Heavey with the Engineering Division of Public Works. Before I get to the arterial street discussion, I just want to give you, since we're on the visual presentations today, I thought I'd provide a visual of the investment that Public Works has made in our street system during the last 3 years, and then what we plan to accomplish next year. And so I'll just run through these. It's more for the visual, but I do think it's important. The projects in red are the projects that engineering manages, and it comes out of our capital program, and the arterial street expansion is one of those projects in engineering. The brown color, those are our neighborhood reconstructions. So you've heard about the 20 to 25 blocks of neighborhood streets we reconstruct every year. That's the projects in brown. The green is on our street budget, and that is the concrete joint repair projects. The yellow is also in our street program, and that is the asphalt overlays. The purple also comes out of the street program, and that is the microsurfacing. The blue is our water main replacement projects. And then the dark green is the state projects, or the city-state projects that we work on together. And so this is the 2010 map. This is the work we completed in 2010. I don't know if this is, there we go. Now we've added the 2011 projects onto that. Now we've added the 12, and then finally we'll add the 13 projects on there that we plan to do. And so I'm just, with your support, Public Works has made a tremendous impact on all areas of the city and in several miles of streets throughout the city. So let's go to that pie chart. And just to kind of quantify that a little bit, this is what we have spent in our sales tax dollars from 2009 through 2012, and then what we have programmed to spend in 2013. And 72% of our sales tax has been spent or has been dedicated to the preservation of our existing streets. And when I talk preservation, I'm talking about the techcrete work, the concrete joint repairs, the asphalt overlays, the microsurfacing, and then the street reconstruction projects. You can just leave that up. Okay, now we'll touch on the arterial street program, and I think it's important, since this funding package was put together back in 2007 and 2008, that I kind of take everybody through the process of where we are today. So for several years prior to the economic recession, Sioux Falls was maturing at about 1,000 acres of land a year. In 2007, Planning and Public Works met with the development community to discuss, and so we could get a better understanding of the future arterial street needs. To meet the need, it was determined that the city needed financial participation from the development community. And so we set out on an 18-month journey. We met twice a month for those 18 months. We studied multiple options, then ultimately agreed the best approach was to implement 2 new platting fees. One to expand the arterial street system, and then one to expand the water distribution system. A nexus study for the arterial street platting fees determined that, based on trip generations, the plating fee should generate 30% of the cost of the arterial street, and that the community should contribute 70%. The development needs the arterial street for access to its development, and the community needs the arterial street to efficiently commute throughout the city. A nexus study for the water distribution system plating fee determined that the fee should generate 100% of the cost of the water main in that arterial street, because only the development benefits from that water main. Recognizing more funds were needed or required in addition to the plating fees, the committee's recommendation was to level off the second penny sales tax from the 0.92 to the full penny. This 0.08 increment, combined with the plating fees and the 0.92 sales tax, would fund the arterial street program. The intent with these funds would be used for the expansion of a gravel road to a paved rural section or a paved urban section, the expansion of a 2 or 3 lane road to a 4 or 5 lane road, and the addition of turn lanes at our arterial intersections. This plan went into effect on January 1st of 2009 and did not include a matching component in regards to the plating fees or the 0.08 sales tax. The plating fee ordinances did contain a stipulation that they only became effective if the second penny sales tax was leveled off to the full percent. And then came the economic recession. Development was down, building permits were down, and plating was down. Some of the developers, in an attempt to avoid the plating fees, went ahead and platted their ground prior to the beginning of the plating fee in January 1 of 2009. So this, combined with the recession, resulted in low plating fees being collected in 2009, 2010, and 2011. So our focus during the recession was on the preservation of our existing infrastructure versus the expansion of our arterial street system. All right, this represents the arterial street expansion funding from 2009 through 2013. The blue represents the arterial street plating fees. The red represents the 0.08 portion of the second penny sales tax, and then the green represents Public Works' allocation of the 0.92 of the second penny sales tax. And what this kind of shows is that the plating fees in 9, 10, and 11 were fairly consistent and were low, much lower than we anticipated. The 0.08 funding was steadily increased throughout the 5 years. But the one thing you do notice is that the 0.92 sales tax portion dramatically reduced. And that's when we talk about where these funds were diverted from arterial street expansion projects to preservation projects. But with development on the rise, so is the need again to expand arterial streets. In 2013, we planned to use these funds to add turn lanes at 57th and Western. We plan to add an additional lane in each direction on Western Avenue south of 57th Street. We plan to expand Western Avenue from Timber Oak Trail down to Highway 106 from a gravel road to portions of it will be a 2-lane urban road and portions of it will be a 2-lane rural road, and portions of it will be a 3-lane urban road with curb and gutter. And then finally, we'll be expanding Benson Road from Career over to Marion Road, and that currently exists as a 2-lane rural section. We'll be expanding it to a 4-lane urban section. Now that development is on the rise, I do think it's important to continue with the current arterial street funding package and then to update the long-range arterial street needs in a joint effort between the city and the community and the development community. And I think this will position us very well for the growth that we're seeing today and for the growth we're seeing in the future. So with that, I will attempt to answer some questions I have, and I fully extend. I mean, my intent today is that this is more of an introduction to everybody, and then if we need to come back in a couple months and go into more detail, we're more than happy to do that.
Okay, thank you, Chad. Just stay there, I'm sure. Councilor Staggers, I think I saw a fan go up.
Okay.
You can start.
Chad, I remember the debate over increasing the sales tax to the full penny. And one of the arguments was used that we have an $80 million backlog, I believe that was the number, on arterial streets. And if we don't do this, the world's going to come to an end, basically. I mean, we had a lot of people here on that night when the sales tax increase was passed by a 5-4 vote. Well, now I haven't heard anything about the $80 million shortfall that we have or whatever. It's kind of like, oh, everything's okay. But realistically, what kind of backlog do we have?
I think it's a fair question, and I think with the economic recession that we had, I think a lot of what we talked about prior with the $80 million never came to fruition because of the recession. And so this has really been, if you look at just the platting fees, you can see that 2012 is the first year where we're almost to that $1 million mark, and we'll talk about more of that tonight during the council item. But I think you're finally seeing the development pick up again in the city of Sioux Falls, and I do think 12 has been a good year. I think 13 and 14 are going to be good years. And now I do think we're getting to the point where we should sit down with the development community again and have a thorough discussion about what the 5-year backlog is, or what is the 5-year need now, because a lot of things have changed. And when we put that number together, we weren't just talking about turning gravel roads to 4 or 5 lane urban roads. We were talking about doing things like what was done on Marion Road years ago, just going from a gravel road to a 2-lane rural section road. So it wasn't just taking a gravel road and putting down 5 lanes of pavement and spending $6 to $7 million per mile. We looked at all types of expansion because like Marion Road has served us very well. It is serving us very well today as a 2-lane rural road. And so I think it's time that we sit down again with the development community and put that, or modify that 5-year program.
If I could just also mention
please.
that, I hope this time that we can get a realistic number from the development community, because I remember at the time 80 million, most of us I think were really skeptical of that number. It just seemed so, large. And if we could get a realistic number, that would be the best thing.
And I think at that particular time, the number was probably good, but with what happened.
Thank you. Councilman Anderson.
To continue along that line of discussion, too, I agree with you, Chad. I think that the numbers were probably good at that time, and then we had the economic downfall, which was nobody's fault. It wasn't the cities, it wasn't the developers. But when this plan was sold, and I mean sold to the city council, we were told that the platting fees would generate about $6 million a year, somewhere in that area, and that the 1/8 of a cent would generate around $3.5 to $4 million. Now, since 2009, that 2008 has been generating the type of money we've said. The platting fees, of course, fell off the roof because actually at that time we were breaking all kinds of records in 2007, 2006, and 2008 for building. We were building like the city has not built before. And even now in 2012, or in 12 here, we're talking $1 million in plotting fees. We're still way behind on plotting fees. And that's where I've questioned this as being a good deal, because basically the numbers aren't coming out just in one segment of all this. And then your statement about the 0.92, how much in 11 and 12 did that 0.92 actually generate? And how much of it was actually moved away from this fund? See, that's what I'm talking about. It wasn't that the 0.92 wasn't generating sales tax revenue. It was that there was an adjustment made in this program, and that money was utilized in other areas. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So, if I may.
Please.
I would like to comment that the plan at the time was, let's just say, $4 million from .08, $6 million from plating fees. And at that time, there was already about $5 million of .92 money in the program. And the intent was then to add $500,000 a year to that $5 million. So that would continually grow by $500,000. I will say in 2010, there was about $3 million of .92 money that was transferred out of the engineering program and put into the street program, which was for strictly preservation. And the maintenance program, both the concrete and asphalt overlay, we've spent more money in all those programs every year. The numbers went up every year since 2009. Now, of course, in 10, it really went up because we added the $3 million. But over the years, that money, more money's been invested in the preservation of roads versus the expansion of roads.
And if I can continue?
You may.
That is what I've been trying to pull out of from Public Works when we started this conversation, is where is that money going? Can we better explain where that money is going and how it is impacting our citizens? And that's what I hadn't been hearing until just recently. And that's why I kept bringing this back up. Since 09, I'll agree. I didn't vote for this in 09. I wasn't for it. I didn't think it was a good deal. And I don't know if I'm still on that side of the road, but I think that it's something that we need to continually look at, and especially when monies have been earmarked. That .92 was earmarked for arterial streets. And basically, like you said, having that discussion with the developers, with the home builders, and explaining why. That's what I've heard from that group, is they just want to know why that money that they consider part of their plan has been moved. And I'm all for the move also, as far as the moving that we have done, because it has increased projects that I think are very valuable to our city, and basically fixing older roads that get to those new arterials. You know, if you're bumping your head off the top of the roof of your car before you get to that nice road, you're not going to be too happy when you get there. So I think that the discussion needs to continue. Councilman, Chair, I am going to request that we continue this discussion beyond this meeting. David Bixler is unable to attend today. He has worked very hard to put together a presentation for this, and I would just like to suggest that we continue this in next month's meeting also. But I think we're headed in the right direction now, Chad, getting this information out and stating that we need to relook at this whole program, because I'm still very hesitant that I'm seeing the citizens, doing the bulk of the field work here.
And if you look at what we've spent the .08 money on the last 3 years, 2009 we expanded a 2-lane rural road, which was Sertoma on the west side, from 12th up to 26th to a 4 or 5 lane urban. So that was really spent. I'd call not in the core area, but it was an existing road. We also did work on 41st Street from Highway 11 out to a 6-mile road. We also did work on Benson Road from I-29 over to Cliff Avenue. And then in 10 and 11, really the only expansion projects we did was getting 69th Street built, let's say from Sioux Falls Christian over to Southeastern Avenue, and then getting Southeastern tied back into about a quarter mile north. So we really got that 69th Street and Southeastern Avenue corridor finished. And then, of course, in 12, it was expanding Marion Road from a 3-lane to a 5-lane. So that was, I'll say that was an existing street that just needed to be expanded. And then we've added some turn lanes on various projects. And then this year, one of the true expansion projects was Louise Avenue from 85th down to 95th.
If I may, Chair?
Yes, one more.
Thank you. In 10 and 11, Chad, you talked about how the .92 was reduced. Could you, does this graph actually show us how much sales tax revenue that percentage generated, or is this just showing what we've utilized?
On this one here,
Yes.
this is what we spent, but I have that information.
Okay.
Because in 10 is when there was a significant amount of money transferred, but then in 11, in the arterial street expansion program, the budget of .92 money was only $950,000. And so a significant amount of that .92 money was reprogrammed and put into preservation versus expansion.
And how was that done? Was that done in our monthly transfers, or was that done in the yearly CIP?
The 2010 transfer was done as a transfer mid-year, but everything else then was reprogrammed. So when we started working in 2010, when we started working on the 11 through 15 budget, we actually made the changes in the capital program then. So there's only 1 year where there was a large transfer. And then, of course, also there was, in 11, there was a supplement of about $1.1 million. That was 2010 money that was left over. That went to Techcrete and an overlay on 41st Street. The money that was transferred in 2010 was used for the overlays on Russell Street, Minnesota Avenue, and then we did purchase 3 semi-loads of Techcrete with that money. And then also in 12, there was another large supplement with money left over from 11. That went to went to several projects.
Thank you, Chad.
Okay, so what I'm hearing here is that we want you to come back, kind of give us a breakdown of where this money has gone since it started, if you would. How much was exactly, and how much was supplemented in from other budgets, or from the budget that came in, like you said, from 11 to 12 or from 9 to 10, that kind of thing, where the money went. And I see where you're coming, but let's just get it out in the open so that everybody knows what's going on. We're open for everybody to see, and we don't have anybody thinking we've done something here that we shouldn't have been doing, because it appears to me that while the arterial street platting fees have dropped off because of the recessions, the rest of it is done fairly well because Sioux Falls has not wasn't affected by the recession as much as other places, other than in the housing market. And so we need to get that information to us, and then we can go a little stronger. And 1 second.
Yeah.
And then this money that we're using has been is supposed to have been used for mostly gravel to paved road, from a county road to a gravel to a paved road, so that we've got a development coming in that Mike was so good to show us. These developments coming in. We need to get a road into them so that the developers then can branch off and build that. And then from 2-lane, when they really expand from a 2-lane to a 4-lane with a turning lane or whatever, and then doing like what we're going to be doing here on 57th and Western this next summer, putting in some turn lanes when they do expand and we become pretty busy intersection. And those are basically the 3 things that this money should be used for. And to make sure that that's what we've been doing with the money, after that, and that if some other use of that money has been there, perhaps we look at coming to some other kind of committee or to this board or this council or the land use committee for authorization to do that. Okay, Councilman Anderson.
I guess just one other statement is that when the council in '09 passed this was extra money. The actual arterial platting program is funded with the
Right.
0.92%, correct? That the extra plotting fees
Right.
and the eighth of a cent was extra money, was a special program that we brought in to be supplemental to that 9.2 or the 0.92%. But the 0.92% was the original arterial fund money that was earmarked for arterial funds.
Yeah, if you look at the '09 budget, in the capital plan, there wasn't a .08 line item or a platting fee line item because the capital program was already approved when the arterial street platting fee was approved, or that financing package was. So it was another supplement for $3 million of .08 money and $300,000 for our arterial street platting fee that was amended into the capital program in 2009. But it was a supplement of the .92 money that was already there.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that in mind, I will have to correct and let everybody know that we will not be doing that in December, as that meeting has already been canceled. So it'll be January, the Land Use Committee meeting in January. So that'll give you a little extra time to get that ready. That'd be okay with you?
It is, and if I could ask, do you think that maybe Jim could provide us, or David could provide us some more detail on what you guys would like to see versus some spreadsheets or graphs or
Please work with them.
charts?
Please work with them. If that's okay, we would direct them to.
I see a head shaking in the background there.
Work with them on that. That's exactly what they're there for, and we want to make sure that they help you with that if they can.
And I
Please.
think it's also you don't want to go out and turn a gravel road into a 5-lane road if the need isn't there.
Exactly.
And it's always going to be a balance between expansion, preservation, and I just think we need to keep working together to
Exactly.
see
On
if
the
we
other
can
hand,
find
Chad,
that balance.
we don't want to designate earmark money for something and then have it say, well, we don't need it this year, and so we'll spend it here, and then when we do need it, it's not there when we do need it. And so that's kind of the thing that we're guarding against. And so we want to make sure that things are used the way they're supposed to be used. And if they need to be switched, that the people who authorize it to be used that way are informed or ask for permission to be used the way it might be better to use it at that point. So we'll work with it from that standpoint.
All right.
Fair enough? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 2, or B, number B. Item number B on the agenda, updates on engineering design standards. And you're here for that too?
Certainly.
All right. Thank you, Chad.
Not for much of it, though, just for a small portion of it. The engineering design standards, we use them. They're for the construction of public improvements. They are reviewed annually, and if revisions are required, we make the changes. Ordinance 3822 does require the City Council to approve these standards by resolution. Today we have revisions to 3 chapters, Chapter 9, Sanitary Sewers, Chapter 10, Water Mains, and Chapter 11, Drainage Improvements. These revisions have been reviewed and approved by the Infrastructure Review Advisory Board, and today I'm requesting your support to take these to the full council on December 11th. Each of these disciplines is led by a principal engineer, and they will be taking you today through those revisions. So first up is Ryan Johnson, the principal engineer for sanitary sewers.
Ryan, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Ryan Johnson, work in the engineering division of Sioux Falls Public Works. I'd like to take you through a handful of proposed changes for the Chapter 9 Sanitary Sewer Engineering Design standards. Section 946 deals with the depth of the sanitary sewer. Gravity sewers shall have a minimum depth of 7 feet to the invert of the pipe. Where practical, they shall be designed with a 2% grade, absolute minimum of 1% upon approval by the city engineer. A couple of the highlighted changes here. The first one in red, to the invert, request from the development community to try to fine-tune where we're looking at that minimum measurement be taken. It's from the surface to the actual flow line versus the top of the pipe, so it's just adding clarification to that standard. Took out the portion that said deep enough to serve all basements and on building sewers. The thought being there that there's multiple ways to serve buildings, including lift stations, which is an acceptable way to serve residential buildings. So that portion was pulled out. Also, the existing standard was absolute minimum of 1%, which we wanted to have a little bit more control. So the thought would be it wouldn't be a default to 1% if 2% didn't work for you. Adds a little bit more control for the city engineer's office to say you do have grade. It's a recommendation per the Unified Plumbing Code and the South Dakota DNR. So our standard with the 2% follows that, and with the 1% upon jurisdictional approval follows that as well. So that's the cleanup for that portion. Section 9481 deals with the minimum diameters of our manholes. Minimum diameter, 48 inches, when the influent or effluent piping is less than 18 inches. Manholes are to have a minimum diameter of 60 inches when either the influent or effluent pipes are 18 inches and greater. In all cases, the manufacturer's recommended minimum spacing between the pipes shall be followed. This change is brought on by members of our collections staff who felt that they were witnessing more failures where larger diameter pipes were coming in smaller manholes. Noted that we were having less issues with 60-inch diameter manholes when the pipe got bigger. So this was the driver for this change. Very few pipes in our system, relatively speaking, are 18 inches and greater. So it would generally impact our CIP projects, and we feel it's an improvement to our standard.
Good. I was hoping it wasn't because our guys were getting bigger.
Yeah. Section 9483, manhole locations. I moved this from another section and added item D to this area. Manholes shall be installed at the following locations at the end of each sewer line, at all changes in pipe sizes, grade, and alignment, at all sewer pipe intersections, and added this outside the 100-year floodway or floodplain, or with the rim elevation 1 foot above the 100-year floodway or floodplain. Public Works has made great efforts to pull our sewers out of the floodway and floodplain, and when we can't, we try to raise them above where applicable. We would like to try to continue that standard as well. This is the section that dealt with manhole locations previous and pulled that out. It was located in the sanitary sewer service portion of the design standards, so there's a better place to put that. Section 941010 was a new section added to the wastewater pumping stations. Wastewater pumping stations, pump station structures, and electrical, mechanical equipment shall be protected from physical damage by the 100-year flood and shall remain fully accessible during the 100-year flood. This again is following 10 state standards, which is a regional specification for design of wastewater infrastructure, along with the South Dakota Department of Environmental Standards. They want those to be protected from the 100-year flood. Their typical standard is a 25-year access. Our preference is to push that to a 100-year flood. Of course, this will only, because the city does have a temporary lift station policy. It will not be impacted often, and it will be more used for CIP projects. That was the last of my changes.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Councilor Anderson.
I just had one. Can you go back about 4?
Sure.
Well, right there.
Okay.
Item C, you said there was going to be a better place to put I guess I'm just sort of questioning at distances between manholes not to exceed 400 feet. Could you sort of tell me the reason why that's being taken out and why it was in there in the first place?
This was 400 feet between manholes is a standard that our cleaning equipment varies in range for the areas that it can clean. Try to keep that to a minimum of 400 feet. Do have that the 400 feet minimum is a good standard to have in there. It should be in this, included in this also. It would be an addition to have in there also, a minimum distance.
But it's just generally for cleaning purposes, or?
Correct, yes. For our sanitary sewer collection equipment has minimum lengths for the cameras that it can stick down the lines, for cleaning equipment that can stick down the lines. It pulls that materials or whatever is in those lines back. 400 feet is what our standard distance is to be able to clean those, yes.
All right, thank you.
So you would put an E in there of 400 feet?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Anything else? I had that same thought, Councilor Anderson, so thank you for catching that. Okay, next.
Good evening, I'm Jeff Dunn, Principal Engineer for Water Mains. We take a look at the city's distribution system and the guidelines, as Chad had talked about in Chapter 10, deal with the construction of the water main infrastructure. And I've just got a couple of changes, one big addition to it, and then some minor changes. Okay, we wanted to give some design guidelines on installing large water mains. We call them transmission mains. They're 12 inches or greater in diameter, and we want to give some guidelines on how to install those around large drainage structures. And we set the dimensions on the drainage structure to 4 feet in width because we found over the years that that's about the greatest width we want to be working under or around when it comes to repairing a water main. So we set up two guidelines on where the water main could be installed. First one would be if we decide to construct the water main underneath the culvert. We want to make sure, or if the water main is going to be within 10 feet of the culvert, we want to make sure that the carrier pipe of the water main itself is internally restrained PVC jointed pipe, and that we encase the water main with steel pipe for up to 10 feet outside of the drainage structure itself. Second item was if we were to move the water main outside of the drainage structure, or at least more than 10 feet away, we want to make sure it's the same type of piping material, and that's that PVC with the internally restrained joint pipe. And we also want to make sure if that water main is running within a drainageway that isn't city-owned, that we have the easements to maintain that water system. Finally, item 3 was that we wanted to provide valves on either side of the drainage system so that we could isolate that pipe. If it happened to break, we were able to isolate it if the water levels in the creek were high. Next one is section 4. dealing with master meter assemblies, just some cleanup language here. We wanted to add multifamily residential complexes such that they would be approved. These master meter assemblies, they would need to be approved by the city engineering department. As part of the review process, we may require these meter vaults where the meters are located to have heat, electrical power, or more adequate ventilation. But most importantly, we wanted to make sure that these meter assemblies were protected, or the city's distribution system was protected against backflow, using a backflow prevention device. And those standards are outlined in our cross-connection control manual. With Section 7, Section 7.2 was deleted in its entirety because that verbiage is already in Chapter 41 of the city's ordinance. It was merely duplicate. And then Section 7.1, I wanted to make sure that it was understood that each platted lot had its own individual water service. We didn't want to be splitting water services to platted lots, sharing a single water service. This is another Section 7.8. We're allowing polyethylene pressure tubing for water services. That was added in a couple of years ago for new construction, so we just remove the new construction language in there because it's no longer new. Everybody's pretty much using it. And then we want to make sure that we're not allowing that type of material within the public right-of-way or public water main easement. Lastly, Section 9 has to deal with manufactured or mobile home parks. I merely added this verbiage here to provide some guidance to who was ever developing, or the engineer who was developing the mobile home park, to reference back to 10.4.2 on those requirements for the master meters. And that is the extent of the changes to Chapter 10.
Questions? Yes, Councilor Anderson.
Just one quick one. What's the lifespan of the transmission lines?
Well, it depends. There's a lot of different variables. AWWA standards typically puts it at 70 to 80 years, but underneath the ground you have different laying conditions, different soil conditions, wet environments, dry, sand, whatever the case may be. So it just really depends. We've had pipes that are failing after 35 years, and we've also got pipes in the ground that have been there since 1910. So can't really put a broad lifespan on the pipeline. It basically, we kind of know where the areas are where the pipes are failing.
Thank you.
Councilor Sikarsky.
Question, go back to the Section 10.4.2, if you don't mind, on the meter.
Oh, how do I get this to go back? Got it. This one? Here?
Right there. Is this written so that, and I've heard concerns in the past about the way our manuals are written, that they preclude competition within the industry for meters where, I mean, are we able to get more than one meter used within our city water department? Is there competition on these things so that when we're buying them, that it's not written in a manner that only one manufacturer can supply it?
Well, as you know, the city does supply the meters. I'm not sure if we go out for a yearly bid on those meters themselves, but we do, as far as I know, we're using a certain type of meter on that. Yeah.
All of the materials that the water shop supplies, whether it's the tapping equipment at the main, the copper pipe from the main to the curb stop, the meter, that's all bid annually through a competitive bid process, and there's specifications put together. So it's not a sole source. All that equipment is bid out per a specification. So
And we received numerous bids or more than one bid on that then?
usually.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, one more?
Hello, Andy Berg, Public Works Engineering Department. I am the principal engineer for the stormwater drainage system. Two changes to the Chapter 11 design standards tonight. The first is a sump pump collection system revision. The sump pump collection systems are typically installed in the backyards of properties or in the front yards, depending on many factors, including grade along the lots, that type of thing. We've been seeing issues with sags in our pipes and the collection systems installed in the front yards. The current position in our standards calls for those to be 8 feet behind the right-of-way, so in that 10-foot utility easement behind the sidewalks. And when the pipes are getting installed in that location, then once homes were getting built, the water and sewer services would then be extended from the right-of-way to the house, and they would go underneath that collection pipe that's already in there and would undermine or cause settling under those pipes, and then we get sags in the pipe, and those are causing issues. So in an effort to prevent that on future collection pipes, we're proposing that the collector pipe be installed 2.5 feet behind the curb, back of curb. This would allow that once the pipe is in, the sewer service and water services would also be into the property line of the lot. So there would be minimal risk of additional pipes or services being installed under the collection system at that location. Second change is section 1174, and this is basically just a language cleanup, maximum release rates. The language is currently located in Chapter 13 of our standards. It applies to drainage, so we're moving that into Chapter 11. And it's language that basically says if a project is over 5 acres in size and is zoned non-single family, that their discharge is to be reduced to single-family residential rate for the 5 and 100-year events. That's a standard we're currently enforcing. We just wanted to have it in the right chapter. So those are the two changes I have tonight.
Question, councilors? Councilor
Yes,
Staggers?
Yes, Andy, do we still have the requirement that all new homes have to have sump pumps? Is that,
I'm not certain. That's a building code issue with the sump pump in the house. I can tell you that we require all lots to either be served by a sump pump collection system, meaning the pipes in the backyard that they can connect to, or if they're adjacent to a waterway or a pond, then they don't need this collection system. They can pump directly into those areas. I'm not certain if there's a requirement to have the actual pump in the house.
okay. Thank you very much.
Any others? Thank you, Andy.
Yep.
Councilors, any discussion? Any other questions you'd like to ask? If not, I would entertain a motion to move this on to the full council.
So move, Anderson.
Second, Karski.
I have a motion and a second to move this on to the full council. Are there, hearing no other discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Any other open discussion that we have? I want to thank you for being here tonight and taking care of these important matters, and we'll look forward to seeing you after the first of the year. This meeting is adjourned.